Today, I'm introducing capital budgeting, a foundational part of business plan development. It focuses on how firms evaluate potential long-term investments and decide where to commit their limited resources. These decisions can shape the organization's direction for years, so they require more than simply identifying an attractive opportunity. They involve weighing the investment's purpose, expected value, and fit with a broader business plan. The central idea is disciplined resource commitment, choosing investments that best support the firm's long-term goals. Capital budgeting is how a business decides which major, long-term investments deserve its resources. These decisions can include buying equipment, expanding facilities, introducing a new product line, or acquiring another company. Because the costs are substantial and the benefits may unfold over several years, businesses need to evaluate each opportunity carefully and determine which project should take priority. At the heart of the process is one practical question. Is this investment worth the cost? That question guides comparison of expected returns, risks, and strategic value. Capital budgeting is different from the decisions we make to manage everyday operations. Those daily choices can often be adjusted quickly as conditions change. Capital investments, by contrast, commit the firm's resources for years and sometimes even decades. The long-term impact is what makes these decisions so consequential. Once a business commits capital, that choice can shape its financial flexibility, strategic direction, and ability to respond to future opportunities. That's why capital budgeting requires especially careful analysis before a decision is made. Capital budgeting connects a company's long-term investment decisions to the broader business plan. It gives investors and stakeholders a clear view of where the business intends to commit significant resources, whether that means expanding operations, upgrading capabilities, or sustaining what already exists. Just as importantly, it explains why those investments are necessary and how they support the company's future. The central question is whether each major investment can generate an acceptable return, while also contributing to long-term growth and sustainability. Capital investments generally fall into three broad categories. First, property, plant, and equipment include machinery, vehicles, land, and buildings that strengthen day-to-day operations and increase production capacity. Second, technology and research and development covers software systems, research initiatives, and digital infrastructure that can create a competitive advantage. Finally, acquisitions and expansion support growth by bringing other companies into the organization or opening new locations. Together, these investments can improve operating capability, encourage innovation, and expand both market share and revenue opportunities. The capital budgeting process is a disciplined sequence for deciding where to commit resources. It begins by identifying opportunities, then estimating the cash flows those projects are expected to generate. Next, we evaluate each option using consistent criteria and select the projects that best support our objectives. The process does not end with approval. We monitor and review performance so we can compare results with expectations and learn from the outcomes. Each step builds on the last, reducing the risk of investing in projects that fail to deliver value. To evaluate a capital project, I focus on three complementary measures. Net present value, or NPV, asks whether the present value of expected cash flows exceeds the initial investment, with a positive result indicating value creation. Internal rate of return, or IRR, identifies the discount rate that brings NPV to zero. Projects generally qualify when that rate is higher than the cost of capital. Finally, the payback period shows how quickly the initial investment is recovered. It is simple, but useful for judging liquidity and exposure. Capital budgeting and operating budgeting serve different purposes, and keeping them separate is essential for a credible business plan. Capital budgeting focuses on major, longer-term investments, such as equipment, facilities, or technology. Operating budgeting covers the recurring costs of running the business, including staffing, supplies, and day-to-day activities. The key is matching each expense to the right budget category. When these categories are confused, projections can become misaligned, making it harder to communicate financial strategy and potentially raising concern for lenders and venture capital investors. Every capital budgeting decision involves uncertainty, so risk should be treated as a central part of the analysis, not an afterthought. A well-constructed business plan identifies the major risks connected to each investment and considers how they can affect outcomes. The key is to identify, quantify, and address those risks. That includes market risk, such as changing demand, execution risk, involving the ability to deliver plan, and financing risk, which concerns the availability and cost of capital. Together, these considerations support more disciplined investment decisions. Here's a simple example of capital budgeting in practice. A bakery owner is considering a $50,000 commercial oven, expected to generate $18,000 in additional annual revenue for 5 years. That produces total inflows of $90,000, with a payback period of approximately 2.8 years. More importantly, at an 8% discount rate, the project's NPV is about $21,900, which is positive. The takeaway is that capital budgeting turns business intuition into a data-driven decision, and these same tools can scale from one oven to a billion-dollar facility. To wrap up, capital budgeting is the disciplined process of choosing long-term investments that support business strategy. It strengthens a business plan by showing investors that spending decisions are analytical, not speculative. NPV, IRR, and payback period provide complementary views of value and risk, helping businesses grow sustainably.